Good Thursday morning. We're almost there. It's almost Friday. Today, we're going to work on a spring packet, and for those of you at home, I have that here in Schoology spring reading packet. You can upload that to Notability. You are not submitting anything today. Okay, we're going to do some of this together. There are 6 pages, and we're only going to do pages 1, 2, and 3 here. Okay, and then we'll look at the rest tomorrow. So you're going to get that pulled up and ready to go. I'll give you a minute. Those of you that are here with us in my class or Mrs. Bush's class, you should have a paper copy to use. Write on and follow along with.
We put our name, right?
Yep, and put your name at the top. So if it gets lost, you can find it.
There's 200
All right. This is what they call some people say close read. I like to call it a close read because we're going to read it more than once so we can really see what this article is trying to tell us. Okay, we're going to do some different things with it. We talked a little bit already about when you're reading something, what should you do first? What should you do first when you're getting ready to read something? Sean?
Got the question?
Yeah, you might check out the questions, right? Especially if that's the purpose of this reading. Okay, to go and look at the questions. So let's look at the first page, which looks like, not that. Oh, it's going to show me anyway. So we're going to look at this page here for right now. Okay, that's going to be kind of a note page. But let's see what kind of information it's wanting us to think about as we're reading. We know it's about spring. That's the topic, right? We're trying to figure out what does the author want us to know or learn about as far as spring goes. So over here, this number 1, it says write an inference about the passage. It's an inference. We talked a lot about inferences. What's an inference? Not about this passage, just in general. Nick?
It's like educated guess, kind of.
You might say that. We talked a little bit about that earlier today, how you're kind of, in a way, guessing, but what is giving you evidence that what you're stating could possibly be true? Where's our evidence coming from, Josh?
The story?
The story, or we've been looking at a lot of pictures, right, on the daily reading assignments. Okay, so that picture or the story has to provide evidence for your inference. I'm going to use the word lightly, guess. Okay, so there's proof that it could be true. Number 2 says write a question about the text. So that's just something you, as you're reading, you come up with a question, something you might want to know. Go write that in that box. Number 3, the main idea. We've talked a lot about main idea and details. So the topic is spring. What could the main idea be? I haven't read it yet, but what could the author want us to know about spring? John?
Maybe something about Easter time?
So holidays in spring? Okay, absolutely. Maya?
What day it is?
What day it is? Okay, like when it starts, right? How long it lasts? All right. Adam? Changes that happen in spring? Sure. Sean?
Earth Day, because that thing on about Earth.
So you're looking at some pictures, which, okay, yep, it does. So maybe it's going to tell us about Earth Day being in spring. Ioana? What happens with the weather? Okay, so a lot of different things that the author could tell us just in this one page of information. So we're going to come up with a main idea after we read it. Number 4 says, what is the connection between the spring equinox and the changes that happen in the spring? So we've mentioned some of the changes that might happen, right? Weather, okay, happens in spring. We know that that's different. We might see night and day, right? The light that we get throughout the day is different. Connection. So if they're wanting me to find a connection between spring and the spring equinox, what does connection mean? They might have used the word relationship. What do those words mean? What do they want me to find out? Hunter? Say that one more time. How much they're together? How much that's put together? Okay. Kenny?
What happens to cause the other?
Okay. So if there's a relationship as in cause and effect kind of relationship. Okay, good. Jackson? What they have in common? Sure. Brendan? Okay, so probably more similarities, right? How are they connected? How are they similar? We're not necessarily looking for differences, but that might come about as we're reading. All right. Let's go back to our story here. So we can, or our information, so we can read about spring. Now, spring can have more than one meaning, right? We kind of looked at that word, gathered some information from the pictures, right? Somebody mentioned earth, we see these flower border, because spring is also an item, right? I know a lot of you take apart pens and you find the spring within the pen, right? Okay, so we know that it's not that kind of spring based on some other evidence that we've picked up, right? Okay, so that's part of kind of previewing what you're going to read about as well, and coming up with some purposes or questions you might ask. Before we get started, are there questions you might ask before even reading this? What are some things you might think about asking before we even start reading? Nick?
How long spring is?
Okay, how long spring is? How long does it last? Sure. Jackson? Okay, why do the plants, right? Why do things change in spring? Sean? We'll come back to you. Kenny?
Why does the climate change?
Okay, why does the climate change? Remember? No? All right. All right, let's read. See if we can answer some of these questions and maybe come up with some more. So, first paragraph is where I'm at. It says the first day of spring is March 20th. This day is called the spring equinox. It is when the length of daylight and night are equal. So now we know, we had a question, right? So I'm thinking spring equinox. It asked me about that. It's looking for a connection between that and spring. Now I know what it is, right? It's March 20th. It's when the length of daylight and night are equal. It happens because of the Earth's tilt, orbit, and revolution around the sun. Science is a significant part of this changing season. Plants, animals, and people must adapt to spring. Any connections you can see right now that we might be able to write down back here on this page? No? You want to keep reading? All right, let's keep reading. Oh, Sean?
It changes the weather and how long and short days and nights are.
Okay, so we see the connection of, it's kind of the start of what changes are going to happen, right? So March 20th is the first day of spring, and that kind of marks when all of these changes are going to take place. You might write that down.
Wait,
Kenny?
It's basically kind of like what makes spring spring.
Yeah, it is kind of what makes spring spring, right? The spring equinox is when all that, the daylight is changing, and we start to see the changes, right? We have more sunlight, so plants are changing, so it does kind of make spring spring. Okay? Other thoughts? All right, we're going to keep reading. In the spring, there is more precipitation and the weather begins to become warmer. In the winter, many plants are dormant and discontinue to grow. Most plants will lose all of their leaves to help conserve energy. In some places, the ground is frozen all winter and will thaw with the return of spring. This stimulates seeds, plants, and flowers to grow and thrive. Any other questions we might be able to answer, or questions you have that you might write down? Keep reading, because you can fill this in as we're going. You don't have to wait. If you think of a question, write it in box number 2. If you think of the answer for number 4, the connection, write it in box number 4. All right, I'm going to keep reading. In the spring, there is more food for animals to eat. Animals that hibernated in the winter become active again. Animals that migrate away from the cold to the south return. Birds will return and build new nests, and mammals will dig new burrows. After the spring equinox, the daylight hours grow longer and longer. Because of the sudden change of weather, people must be cautious of severe storms, rain, and tornadoes. Many things change because of the new spring season. All right, let's go back to this first page here. It'll let me. There it is. All right. Let's go over here to 2. Let's start this way. Write a question about the text. So now, this is going to be different for everybody. You're going to take a minute right now, and I want you to write down a question that you have based on the information we read. It doesn't have to be answered by this text. Okay? It can be something that was not answered. It could be something that was answered, but you want more information on it. So you're going to take 1 minute, write a question in box number 2. your question, Kenny.
Already did.
Perfect. Riker, I need you writing a question. Hat off. Thank you. I do too, but oh, not right now. Okay. Write a question about the text in box number 2.
Talk about anything? Like anything in the text, not like
About the text. Yeah, any question you have or you thought about?
I forgot how to draw a question mark.
Little hook with a dot underneath it.
Look with the dot underneath it.
I think that's what.
Mhm. All right, for those of you that are watching and want to share your questions, you can post those on updates. We're going to do a couple in here, and then we're going to continue on here. Go ahead, Kenny, what's your question?
How does spring happen?
How does spring happen? All right, Nick?
Why do animals wake up from hibernation?
Why do animals wake up from hibernation? Josh?
What is the spring equinox?
Say it one more time.
What is the spring equinox?
So you're looking for more information about the spring equinox. What is it? All right, Sean?
Why do animals need new homes?
Ah, why do they need new homes? Good. Adam?
Why are there severe storms?
Why are there severe storms in spring? John? Okay, how'd they come up with the name spring equinox, right? Where did those words come from? Brendan? Okay, why March 20th? And you might even ask, is it different every year? Is it this? Why is it the same every year, right? How does that work, kind of thing? How do they figure that out? What are they using? Good. Jackson? Okay, why do they plants grow back in spring? Last one, Josh.
I don't have a question.
Yes.
But, isn't like winter December 21st and then spring
March 20th.
March 21st?
Yeah, those are the dates.
I
Mhm.
thought it was March 21st.
Well, and I think the first full day of spring is generally marked by March 21st. So it starts like in the
And then-
afternoon sometime on March 20th.
And then
Right.
June 21st is
Yes.
December.
Yep. All right. Back to number 1. Let's make an inference about this passage. So we're taking what we know, coming up with some kind of a new idea. And you might look at your questions that you wrote. Maybe those questions that you just wrote down and shared will help you come up with an inference. I'll give you a second. Think about that. What can you come up with? What kind of inferences? Write it down. If you have one, write it down. We'll share here in a minute.
Are we on what is being
Nope. We're on number 1. Write an inference about the passage. Did you write something in number 2? Yeah, we
Yeah.
skipped number 1. All right, inferences. What did you come up with? What are some new ideas you had? Kenny? Okay, the author maybe enjoys spring, right? Might be their favorite season. Sure, they gave us some information about it. Another inference. Maya.
The author might be a scientist because he knows all this.
Okay, maybe the author, the person that wrote this is a scientist. Sure. A lot of knowledge, right, about spring. Any other ones? Josh? Facing forward, please. All right, write those down again. If you want to share, you go ahead and you can post that on updates as well, along with your question you might have asked. All right, let's go down here. Number 3, main idea of the text. So telling me that the main idea is spring doesn't work. Spring is the topic. So when I ask for a main idea, I want to know, what did the author want us to learn about as far as spring goes? What do they want us to know about spring? You wanna? Okay, right, what happens in spring? So they kind of highlighted some of the changes we see. Jackson? Okay, changes in spring. Nick?
I don't know if this is good, but what's it called? How spring is made.
Okay, so your spring, maybe like how we distinguish it as spring, right? The changes we see, how it's, I understand what you mean by how it's made. Like the changes, the warmth, right? The orbiting, it talked about the Earth orbiting and we have more sunlight and it's warmer. Good. Kenny? The effects of spring, Josh?
What the main idea?
Mm-hmm.
I just had it.
All right, well, we'll come back. So now you come up with your main idea, right? You're gonna write it in that box. So do that, write it in box number 3. What the main idea was. What is most important? We should know this. Everybody should be able to answer this for me. What is the most important thing to remember when you are giving me a main idea or even an inference? What do you have to remember to do? John? Text evidence. And it's important to tell me in the text it states, okay, the author says this. The author also states this, okay? That way I know you're using words that the author used. Some of you just try to pull 1 or 2 words and throw them in there and hope for the best, okay? It's more important to use those words the author is giving you because that's your evidence. That's what's bringing you to this. Your main idea is almost an inference, okay? You're reading it and you're gathering information and coming up with a main idea. You have to support that. And if you can't support it from the text, then there's a good chance it may not be right. It's a good way to check your answers for reading. We always talk about checking your answers for math, right? Is there evidence in that text to support your answers? Let's see, we got one more, right? The connection between the spring equinox and the changes that happen in the spring. We talked a little bit about this already. Let's get some things written down in that box. We writing things down, Josh?
Yep.
Kenny, what do you have?
It's what makes spring spring.
Okay, it's what makes spring spring. So the spring equinox helps, right, us kind of know spring is coming and changes are coming. Josh?
I don't think this is a connection, but I kind of wrote this down. People can see the change from the light in the sun from winter to spring.
Okay, so similar to what we were just talking about, we can see that transition, right? We kind of know that
Because,
changes
like,
are coming.
Because winter, it gets darker really, really fast.
It does.
And then like towards spring and summer it starts to go down like later.
Right, the sun stays up longer, so we know that change is coming, right? It's kind of a sign for us. Good.
Does that mean the sun or we're orbiting closer to the sun?
A little bit, and well, and it's the angle too. So you remember we're tilted, right? And where our position is and how we're spinning. Yep, all of that kind of plays into the seasons we have. Riker?
Well, like, it's kind of confusing because like my bedtime on like weeks is like it's 9, and like when like most of the time at like 7, like now or like a month earlier, it like at like 7 it'd be super dark.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the summertime when I have to go to bed, and I would always say, Mom, it's not even dark because the sun
sun
would
is
be like
still
the
out.
time. Yeah.
Yep,
would
it
be
is confusing, isn't
yeah,
it?
it'll be like the time where cars just get their night lights on.
Oh, yep, that
instead
is
of their
confusing.
daylight.
Makes it harder to go to sleep too, doesn't it,
Yeah.
when the sun is still out and you're trying to sleep?
And I
Yeah.
also still want to play video games.
Yeah. Wyatt, question, comment? All right, well, we'll come back to it. What's that? Oh, it happens. Because you're listening to what the other person is saying and not thinking about what you wanted to ask.
Yeah. And then
Let's turn to the next page. This is a page where we're focusing on those paragraphs. Okay, so each paragraph, let me show you here. Remember, a paragraph is where we have, here they make it nice and easy to see. They've got a space in between and it indents. A lot of times they won't have this space, but wherever you see this indentation, that is generally means it's a new paragraph. Okay, you'll see a lot more if there's dialogue involved. But here I have paragraph 1, this is paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and that's paragraph 4. Okay, so let's look here at this page 2. This is what I want you to do with your mask on. Okay, and somebody nearby, I moved it, it's kind of touchy here. Somebody nearby, I want you to work on answering these questions. So they're each asking the same thing, just of different paragraphs. The focus of the first paragraph. So in other words, what's the main idea of the first paragraph? What did they want you to understand from the first paragraph? What did they want you to understand from the second paragraph, third, and the fourth? Okay, you're answering the same question for each of the paragraphs. Okay, so somebody near you, we'll say 5 minutes, we'll see where you're at, and then we'll come back and talk about your answers. Okay, so find somebody nearby and get started. You can Yeah, you can work on your own, absolutely, that's an option. 5 minutes.
Do we have a group of 3 or just 2? I want your cancels. I think your practice.
So you're working with a partner, I'm gonna pause the video and start it over. So look for video 2.